The baton was a shard of absolute silence in the roaring hall. One moment, Maestro Valerius was a dynamo of motion, carving sound from the air with a furious grace. The next, he was a statue, his arms freezing mid-crescendo. A sharp, choked gasp escaped his lips, a dissonant note against the rolling thunder of the Tchaikovsky. Then he crumpled, a marionette with severed strings, collapsing onto the polished stage of the Grand Aurelia Hall. The music died in a staggered, wheezing collapse of instruments, replaced by a wave of gasps that swept through the audience. From his private box, Emil Valerian watched it all, his heart a cold, hard stone in his chest. He had not come for the music, not truly. He had come out of a hollow sense of duty, to witness the man who had been his father only in blood. As the chaos erupted, the screams, the frantic rush of stagehands, Emil remained seated, his mind already detaching, analyzing. He saw the way the maestro's right hand, the one that had held the baton, was already clenched in a rigid, waxy fist. He saw the faint, acrid scent of bitter almonds, a ghost on the air, a detail only his peculiar neurology would note. Amygdalin, cyanide, a rare, fast-acting variant. Emil was a synesthete of memory. His mind was not a scrapbook, but a perfect, multi-sensory recording. He could rewind the last 5 minutes and experience it all again. The glint of the spotlights on the brass, the sweat on the cellist's brow, the specific vibration of the double basses that had made his water glass tremble. And the baton. He replayed the moment the maestro, with his typical dramatic flair, had picked it up from its velvet-lined case just before walking on stage. No one else had touched it. The police arrived, clumsy bulls in a china shop of high-strung artists. Inspector Gorin, a man whose mind operated in blunt, straightforward rhythms, was out of his depth. He saw a heart attack. Emil saw a murder. "The baton," Emil said, his voice quiet but cutting through the din backstage. The green room was a cacophony of panic and perfumed anxiety. It was treated with the toxin, absorbed through the skin of his palm during the performance. The heat, the sweat, it accelerated the process. Gorin scoffed. "A poisoned baton? That's a theatrical murder, boy." "It is the only possibility," Emil stated, his flaw as present as his gift, a crippling clinical detachment that rendered him an island. He felt no grief for his father, only the compelling pull of an unsolved equation. His external goal was clear, to solve the puzzle. His internal need, to connect, to feel the human chaos around him, was a silent, forgotten instrument within him. His central conflict was twofold. The external antagonist was the cunning murderer hiding among the orchestra, but the deeper struggle was internal, a battle against his own emotional paralysis. The crime forced him to engage with the very human passions, envy, rage, pride, that he had spent a lifetime walling himself off from. He began his interrogation, not as a grieving son, but as a master archivist of the immediate past. He moved from musician to musician, a ghost in their midst. "The maestro," he asked the first flautist, a woman with nervous eyes. "Did he seem agitated before the performance?" "He was always agitated," she sniffed, "a perfectionist. He was furious about the second violinist, though, Lara." Emil's memory provided the timestamp. Minute 2:47 of the performance. A slight hesitation from the second violin section. A flicker of annoyance on the maestro's face. He filed it away. He approached the concertmaster, an aging man with hands that told stories of decades of practice. "Lara Vanya, tell me about her." The old man sighed. A brilliant talent, perhaps the best we've had in that chair. She had a solo, a small, beautiful cadenza in the new piece by Stravinsky. Valerius cut it yesterday, said it was indulgent, shattered her." Indulgent. The word echoed in Emil's mind. It was the same word his father had used to dismiss Emil's own peculiarities as a child. The theme of the story crystallized: the destructive power of artistic passion and how the crushing of a creative spirit can curdle into vengeance. Emil found Lara Vanya sitting alone in a dimly lit practice room, her violin case closed on her lap. She was pale, her eyes red-rimmed, but her posture was rigid. The atmosphere here was charged, a stark contrast to the green room's hysterics. "The Stravinsky cadenza," Emil began, his tone flat. "It was to be your moment." She looked up, her gaze sharp. It was music, true music, not just notes on a page. He called it filigree, unnecessary. Emil replayed the memory of the performance, cross-referencing it with the score he had memorized from a single glance before the concert. He saw it then, the clue, woven into the music itself. "You adjusted your bowing in the second movement," Emil said, his voice devoid of accusation, pure observation. "A slight, almost imperceptible change during the andante sostenuto. You played it with a harsher attack, angrier." Lara's eyes widened a fraction. "I was expressing the emotion of the piece." No, Emil's memory provided the exact sensory data. The score calls for dolce, sweetly. You played it martelé, hammered. It was a protest, a tiny rebellion he would have heard, a maestro of his caliber. He would have known it was you who defied him. He took a step closer, his internal struggle manifesting as a slight tightness in his chest. He was not confronting a killer, he was solving for X. But for the first time, X had a face, a story, a palpable pain. "The baton was in its case in his dressing room," Emil continued, "accessible to anyone in the orchestra. But only one person had a motive born not of general dislike, but of a very specific, recently inflicted, profound humiliation. You didn't just want him dead. You wanted him to die on the podium, in the middle of the music he valued more than a person's soul. You wanted the art itself to be the backdrop for your revenge." Lara's composure broke. The vengeful envy, so carefully contained, spilled out. "He took my voice," she hissed, her hands gripping the violin case like a lifeline. "That cadenza was my voice. He silenced it. So I silenced him. It was poetic." There was no physical struggle. Inspector Gorin, who had been listening at the door, stepped in. The confession was enough. As Lara was led away, she looked back at Emil, her expression one of bitter triumph. "He heard my anger in the music. In the end, he had to listen." Emil stood alone in the silent practice room. The puzzle was solved, the equation balanced. Yet the hollow victory he expected was not there. Instead, he felt a profound and unsettling weight. He had used his flawless memory to reconstruct a crime, but in doing so, he had been forced to reconstruct a human tragedy. He saw the direct line from his father's cold perfectionism to his own emotional isolation, and from that same perfectionism to the creation of a murderer. His arc was complete. He had moved from a state of ignorance, believing the world was a series of solvable, detached patterns, to a painful understanding of the chaotic, passionate currents that truly drove human actions. The case was closed, but the echo of the final, fatal note would linger. He had solved the mystery of his father's death, and in the process had begun to solve the deeper mystery of his own impassive heart. The new normal was one of feeling, and it was terrifying.